There is this spiritual battle taking place within your own soul. And this battle is externalized in physical three-dimensional space. So today we will cover the very powerful mystic symbolical language of Mark 3:22 and how it affects you directly. We will cover why genuine spiritual inner transformation is often labeled dangerous by the egoic parts of your mind that fears its own dissolution and death, and also why people seemingly external from yourself often try to take you away from this path. So let's start by setting the scene a bit in Mark 3. So there's this very tense scene. There are these religious experts from Jerusalem that stand in the crowd, and they're watching Jesus heal and drive out demons. Now, instead of amazement, they are a bit upset about this. They whisper these accusations that the power behind him is dark and demonic, that he's in league with Beelzebul, the prince of demons. And the air is very charged with this suspicion and hostility as this earthly spiritual authority confronts something it can't explain or control. This settled traditional religious authority. And so this verse, like many in scripture, is so wonderful because it's really playing out on different dimensions. So let's begin to unpack this, right? So Mark 3:22 goes as follows. And the scribes which came down from Jerusalem said, He hath Beelzebub, and by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. So the key here of this verse is that it reveals this collision between awakened consciousness on one hand, represented by Jesus, and on the other hand, institutionalized religion, the spiritual authority of the earth. And there is a confrontation between these two, right? The scribes represent the intellect bound to form, to tradition, to external authority, to the status quo, to what is and what is comfortable, your comfort zone. Came down from Jerusalem. Again, this does not mean they come from a physical city called Jerusalem, right, that we can point at on a map. It's not geographical. Like everything in scripture, it is psychological. So Jerusalem symbolizes this established spiritual doctrine. That is where they come from. That is the point of view they come from. And to come down is to descend into this judgment that flows naturally from this established spiritual doctrine. Because if you are loyal to a doctrine, then anyone who is not, you automatically begin to cast judgment. There's this analysis, this accusation, rather than being open-minded and perhaps learning something new, being open to a new understanding. So they represent a very close-mindedness. But Jesus, on the other hand, of course, is a bit of a rebel, right? He goes against this organized religion, against the status quo. He represents awakened imagination, the awakened mind, the awakened self. And it is the realized I am awareness, operating very freely. He's healing, he's liberating, and he's dissolving this inner fragmentation that is the cause of so much suffering in one's life. Now, the powers that be, they accuse him, he hath Beelzebub, right? This shows that these unawakened minds, they project fear onto power it does not understand. What it can't control, it must demonize. Now, Beelzebub is known as the Lord of the Flies, and he symbolizes the egoic mind, which is very restless. It's buzzing, like a swarm of flies devouring a dead carcass. It feeds on decay, on distraction, and appearance rather than essence. And so the scribes there, they can't deny the results. They can't deny Jesus is getting stuff done, right? He is healing these people. And so they can't say, well, that's not really happening, right? The devils are being cast out. Transformation is happening. But they still feel threatened, right? So the natural mind, they attack the source rather than the evidence, right? And this is a very key, very important insight, because when consciousness shifts, when you begin to expand, often this resistance also intensifies, right? This very own internal resistance, or sometimes external resistance, right? If you have grown up in a very religious family, then if you start to ask some questions, well, hey, does this really make sense? They often descend upon you like these flies, right? And this is a time-old pattern, right? This is not something new. This is not something unique to your life. Again, thousands of years ago, when they wrote these texts, this was the same pattern that was happening. It's because it's very universal, right? It's just part of the human experience. And then this very key piece: by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. This reflects this very distorted perception, right? The natural mind, the egoic mind, the selfish mind, natural mind assumes all power must come from struggle, from opposition or hierarchy, right? And this is why you see these elites, right? All they do is struggle with other people, with other elites, with themselves, right? There's no harmony there. And this is reflected into your own mind, right? This part of your mind, it's struggling. And so perhaps you feel you're struggling with yourself. There's this inner battle going on, right? This is all happening because part of your mind is still resting in this old state of consciousness, the state descended down from Jerusalem. So esoterically, this really reveals this inability of the divided mind to comprehend unity. Right? That really is the issue. The key issue, if you really want to boil it down to its essence, is that your mind is divided and it can't comprehend unity. And that is where this verse is pointing at. Right? It believes that power must oppose power rather than transcend it. Right? Jesus said, those who live by the sword die by the sword representing the mind. So if you try to fight these inner mental battles all the time, you'll die from it, right? This is what depression is. Just being stuck in your own mind all the time, at war with yourself. And so, again, back then, they had this too, right? They saw these patterns, and so they tried to express them in this wonderful mystical symbolism. And these scribes here that come down from Jerusalem, they symbolize these inner mental patterns that feel unsafe when imagination, divine imagination, which is what Jesus Christ represents, the power to save, the power to truly utilize your own free will to become something different, to forgive your own sins, which are just incorrect mental patterns, right? These scribes are those patterns that make you feel unsafe. They swarm you like these flies. And so the casting out of devils is the release of these false states, of these fears, of these compulsions. And it is this inner purification, not some kind of, again, this inner warfare that you might feel within your own mind. So this verse also invites a great deal of self-observation. When this inner transformation begins to occur, if you participate in these mystic practices, do you call it truth, or do you begin to label it as dangerous? Right? So it's inviting you to be critical there, to be open-minded simultaneously. And open-minded criticality is what you want. And the deeper teaching is that liberation looks very threatening to the ego, because the ego only survives by bondage, by this inner conflict. So true Gnosis does not argue with this accusation. It simply continues to free what is bound, right? So don't argue with yourself. Don't get into this mess. Right? Don't get into the mud with the pigs. Rise above it. Don't argue with it. Just simply continue with freeing yourself. If you found this video insightful and eye-opening, I invite you to leave a like and a comment on this video, perhaps with any questions you might have. And if you have a more expansive question, then I invite you to take a look at the link in the video description. Thank you, and I will see you soon.